There is something very strange about your brain, and almost nobody told you about it. You were trained to see it as a small gray machine inside your skull that pushes out thoughts and worries and plans like a factory line. But your brain behaves much more like an antenna that can either pick up noise or tune into a very deep signal of consciousness and inner peace. When this antenna is out of tune, life feels meaningless and heavy, even when everything looks normal from the outside and people think you are doing fine. Think about a time when you felt completely disconnected from life, even though nothing was obviously wrong from the outside. You had a working phone and internet, and maybe even friends and family near you, and still your inner world felt like a room with no air. Thoughts were looping and the body felt tight and tired, and your chest carried a quiet pressure that never really left. You tried to fix it in the only way you were taught, which is to work harder and achieve more and control more and keep yourself busy all the time. But the more you pushed the system, the more noise you created and the less you felt at home in your own mind. If you were a calm engineer looking at this human system from the outside, you would not start by blaming the hardware. You would not say this device is useless and I should throw it away. You would say the configuration is wrong and the code is incomplete and the antenna is locked on the wrong channel. You would ask, what signal is this brain actually listening to all day, and why does it never enter a mode of stillness and self-awareness and healing? So let us look at you in this simple engineering way. Your body is the hardware, and it has muscles and organs and hormones and all the wires and circuits of a living device. Your brain is both the central processor and also a sensitive antenna. It receives input from your 5 senses, and also from a deeper field that you sometimes call intuition or spirit or higher consciousness or spiritual awakening. Around you there is a living field of existence which includes the earth and the sky and other hearts and minds, and a mystery that many people call the sacred. Your system is always talking to this field even when you ignore it. Most people run their brain in only one main mode, which we can call the achieving brain. This mode is trained by school and social media and the hustle culture. The achieving brain constantly calculates how to win, and how to avoid pain, and how to look successful in front of others. It is useful for work and study and planning, and we should respect it. But when you live only in this mode, your brain becomes a machine that never powers down and never listens, and you begin to feel like a project instead of a person. Mindfulness and emotional clarity are almost impossible when you are stuck there. There is another mode which we can call the awakened brain. This mode is not lazy, and it is not weak. It is deeply intelligent in another direction, because it is less focused on forcing results and more focused on listening and sensing and trusting a wider field of consciousness. In this mode, you start to notice synchronicity and small guiding signs and a gentle inner voice that was drowned by noise before. You think about a friend and they suddenly call you. You feel a quiet pull to take a different road, and later you realize that this small choice saved you from trouble. It feels like life is no longer against you, but quietly cooperating with you. You already know a little taste of this awakened brain because it appears in certain situations almost by accident. You might stand by the ocean or walk in a forest or sit on a rooftop at night, and suddenly your mind softens and the body relaxes, and a simple feeling of inner peace arises without any special effort. Scientists speak about brain waves and the rhythms of the earth and whether your brain can resonate with the environment. Whether you believe the theory or not, you know the experience because nature has already given you this medicine many times. The problem is that you do not stay there long enough, and you do not learn how to enter this state on purpose through meditation and stillness and self-awareness. To make this real and grounded, let us talk about one person. Imagine a young software engineer named Arjun who is very good with code and systems. He can debug complex problems late at night, and his company values his sharp mind. From the outside, he looks successful because he has a stable job and a good laptop and constant messages on his work chats. But at night, when he lies down, his mind refuses to rest, and the same brain that solves technical bugs now obsessively scans his whole life for errors. Thoughts appear like this: what if I fail? What if I get replaced? What if this emptiness never goes away? Days turn into weeks, and his sleep becomes shallow, and his world loses color and taste, and he starts to secretly believe that his hardware is broken. One evening, after a long day of screens and fluorescent lights, Arjun steps out onto the terrace of his building. The city around him is buzzing with traffic and people and balcony lights and mobile screens shining in the dark. For a moment he looks up and notices the open sky that stretches quietly above all this noise. Something in him pauses because the sky is so simple and so calm, and it has been there every night while he was staring into a small rectangle of light. A new thought arises in him which feels slightly different from his usual mental loops. He thinks maybe my brain is not only a factory for worry, maybe it is an antenna that I have never really tuned in the right way. Because he is an engineer, he decides to treat his own life like an experiment instead of a failure. He gives himself a clear protocol for the next 21 days, and he promises to follow it even if he feels silly at first. The first part of his protocol is very small. Every day he will sit for 10 minutes with his phone in another room, and he will not use any music or apps during this time. He will sit on his bed or on a chair with his spine reasonably straight and his eyes gently closed or half open, and he will simply feel his breath moving in and out. When thoughts come, he will not fight them, but he will gently name them in plain language, like planning or fear or memory, and then he will return to feeling the breath. This is his simple practice of mindfulness and self-awareness. The second part of his protocol is to reconnect his body to the earth at least once or twice a day in a conscious way. He takes small moments where he stands barefoot on the ground, or touches a tree trunk, or places his hand on a sun-warmed wall. During these half-minutes he allows his shoulders to drop, and he silently says inside himself that he is connected to the planet and to life and to a field bigger than his personal story. He does not know if the earth has a frequency that his brain can match, but he is willing to behave as if there is a relationship and to see what happens to his nervous system when he honors that relationship. The third part of his protocol deals with strong emotions, because this is where he usually escapes into distraction. Whenever he notices anxiety or sadness or shame, he will not immediately open an app or force himself to work more. Instead, he will treat the emotion as a system alert from his own consciousness. He will pause for a few breaths and ask inside himself in simple language, "What are you trying to show me? And where am I out of tune with my own truth?" Then he will breathe deeply into his chest and imagine that this feeling is energy that wants to move and be understood rather than a defect that must be hidden. This is his practice of emotional clarity and inner healing. The first days are not easy, and his achieving brain complains loudly because it cannot see any quick metrics or graphs that prove the method is working. He feels restless in the 10-minute sits, and sometimes the emotions feel stronger before they soften. But he keeps going because an engineer knows that a new configuration needs some time to stabilize. Slowly, very small changes start to appear like tiny lights in a dark corridor. During his meditation, he begins to notice short gaps between his thoughts where nothing in particular is happening. These gaps are not dramatic, but they feel strangely fresh and clean. In those seconds, he senses a quiet presence that is not anxious and not busy and not afraid. As the weeks pass, he also notices changes in his daily interactions. The same stressful emails and messages still arrive, and deadlines still exist, but there is a little more inner space around his reactions. One afternoon, he feels a surge of anger while reading a message from a colleague. In the past, he would have typed a sharp reply within seconds. Now he feels a tightness in his chest and remembers his protocol. He steps away from the keyboard and takes a few slow breaths, and he realizes that the anger is not only about this message, it is about an old fear of being ignored and disrespected. When he replies later, his words are firm but not attacking, and the whole situation unfolds in a more peaceful way. One evening while walking home, he has a moment that feels almost like a private joke from the universe. He is deep in thought about quitting his job and running away from everything because the journey of awakening feels too hard. At that exact moment, a small child on a bicycle wobbles toward him and nearly bumps into his legs, and then laughs and says sorry in an innocent voice before riding away while singing. For some reason, this tiny event breaks open something in his chest, and he feels tears in his eyes. It feels as if life itself touched his antenna with a gentle finger and whispered, "We see you, and you are not alone, and stay with us." He goes home with a softer heart. This is how an awakened brain begins to feel from the inside. It is not a state where all problems vanish and you float above human life. It is a state where you experience yourself as part of a living system instead of a disconnected, broken machine. You start to trust that guidance can rise out of silence, and that meditation and stillness are not escapes from reality, but ways of tuning up the antenna of consciousness. Inner peace becomes something you can touch for a few breaths, even in the middle of old chaos, and slowly those few breaths join together into longer moments. For now you do not need to accept any big theory about frequencies or earth resonance. You only need to be willing to run your own small experiment, like Arjun. Tonight before you sleep you can create your own short protocol. Turn off your devices for 10 minutes and place them in another room or at least out of reach. Sit on your bed or on the floor with your back supported and put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Breathe slowly through your nose and let the air go out softly through your mouth. Feel the weight of your body supported by the ground and imagine that the earth is holding you gently from below. As you sit there, let thoughts move across your inner screen, but do not click on them. You are simply watching the activity of your own mind and naming it softly inside as worry or planning or memory or fantasy. Underneath all this movement, there is a quiet layer of stillness, and your task is not to manufacture that stillness, but to notice it whenever it appears, for even 1 second. At some point, you may feel a subtle sense that you are connected to something larger than your anxious story. It might feel like warmth in the chest, or a small relaxation in the jaw, or a softer quality in your breathing. That is the antenna beginning to tune. If you feel comfortable, you can also speak a simple intention inside yourself during these minutes. You can say that if there is a larger intelligence in this life, and if there is a deeper field of consciousness in this universe, then you are willing for your brain and your heart to tune to that frequency. You can ask that you be guided through small signs, and through synchronicity, and through quiet knowing toward choices that bring more truth, and more love, and more inner peace. Then you do not need to chase any dramatic miracle. You only need to watch for gentle shifts in the days that follow. Those shifts may look very ordinary from the outside. You may notice a little more courage to say what you really feel in a conversation. You may feel a little more kindness toward your own pain instead of immediate judgment. You may discover tiny islands of stillness inside the same old schedule where you suddenly feel fully present for a few breaths. This is how real spiritual awakening often begins in modern life, not with thunder and lightning. It begins with a brain that slowly moves from constant noise into something that feels like quiet music. Your brain is not only a factory for thoughts and worries, it is an instrument inside a great orchestra that includes other people and nature and the unseen dimensions of existence. When you practice mindfulness and meditation, and when you allow moments of stillness and self-awareness, you are not wasting time. You are learning to play in tune with life instead of fighting it. Perhaps this is the real upgrade your system has been waiting for, and it does not require you to change your face or your job or your city immediately. It asks you first to change the way you use the beautiful hardware you already have, and to let your awakened brain remember that it is part of a living earth and a vast field of consciousness, that at the deepest level it was never truly alone.